Welcome to another episode of Pipa L Pod. When you think about the trajectory of a massive stadium-filling artist, the picture that usually comes to mind is, I don't know, pretty sterile, right?
Yeah, you tend to imagine this very calculated, polished ascent.
Exactly. Like it was drafted in a boardroom somewhere by publicists and label executives. But I want you to imagine a completely different reality for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
How does an artist who started with like a literal private joke for a band name and who recorded their earliest hits in a room the size of a bathroom, how do they end up as a defining generational icon?
It's a huge leap.
Right. And more profoundly, how does that same artist survive a near-death experience only to channel that raw, terrifying trauma into this, 2025 Halloween-released album built entirely around witchcraft, folk horror, and death?
It is a massive contradiction. I mean, we're looking at a career defined almost entirely by leaning into chaos rather than, trying to manage it or sanitize it.
Which is exactly why we're talking about this today.
Right. So for our deep dive today, our mission is to really explore that exact evolution. We're going to trace the journey of Florence and the Machine, moving from those incredibly scrappy, chaotic beginnings through some monumental, high-pressure milestones. And then diving into the often misunderstood dynamics of the band itself before finally arriving at this recent, very dark rebirth in 2025 and 2026.
I want to start right at the beginning, though, because I was looking through our sources, and I actually had no idea about the origin of the band's name.
It's pretty funny, honestly.
It sounds so grand and theatrical, right? Florence and the Machine. But it was essentially just a panic move born out of a teenage joke.
That is honestly often how the best nomenclature happens. You have Florence Welch and her teenage collaborator, Isabella Summers. They were, making music together, and they just had these goofy nicknames for each other.
Right.
So Isabel was Machine, and Florence was Florence Robot.
Which, by the way, sounds like some obscure 80s synth-pop duo.
It really does. But Florence has her very first gig coming up. She is literally an hour away from going on stage, and she realizes she doesn't actually have an official name for the act.
Talk about cutting it close.
Yeah, so she seriously considers calling it Florence Robot is a Machine, which is just...
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
She realizes that name is going to drive her completely mad, so she just shortens it on the spot to Florence and the Machine.
Which I think perfectly sets the tone for their early era, like between 2007 and 2010.
Oh, absolutely. That impromptu, almost accidental origin story bleeds directly into how they physically made their music.
Yeah, like when they were working on their debut album, Lungs, which dropped in 2009, they were definitely not in some multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art facility.
No, they were not.
And if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, when they say they recorded it in a space the size of a bathroom, they're just exaggerating for indie cred. They are not.
It was literal.
Literally. Their massive breakthrough hit, Dog Days Are Over, a song that eventually became completely inescapable, was originally recorded with 0 instruments in a studio the size of a loo.
And we really need to pause and think about the mechanics of why that actually matters.
What do you mean?
Well, musically, a bathroom or any tiny tiled room creates a very specific acoustic environment. The sound waves hit those hard, reflective surfaces and bounce back instantly.
Oh, right. So you get that natural reverb.
Exactly. It creates a sharp reverberation. And because they didn't have room for like a full drum kit or sweeping orchestral sections in there, Florence had to use the room itself.
Wow, okay.
That physical limitation forced a highly percussive, almost aggressive vocal style. She's essentially using her voice to fill the space of missing instruments.
Okay, I see what you're saying. The physical limitation actually becomes their sonic signature.
Precisely.
But the chaos wasn't just in the studio, though. In 2009, they're out on a European tour, grinding it out, trying to build momentum, and their equipment trailer literally catches on fire.
That's a total disaster.
Right. All of their instruments, all their custom gear, just going up in flames on the side of the road. But what really caught my eye in the sources was Florence's reaction to it.
She was oddly calm about it, right?
Yeah, she didn't have a meltdown. She described standing there, just listening to the harp strings ping and snap in the heat of the fire. And her thought was, that's a strange sound. We recorded it, and I want to use it in a song.
It's just a remarkable psychological pivot.
Isn't it?
Where almost anyone else sees the disastrous, expensive end to a tour, she literally hears a texture. She hears a sample.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
Is that just, a romanticized myth Artists tell in retrospect to sound cool, like a fire is a fire, it destroys your livelihood. I'm trying to imagine watching my gear burn and then having to go rent random unfamiliar instruments just to finish a tour.
Right, it sounds awful.
That just sounds like an absolute nightmare, not some superhero origin story or creative awakening.
Well, it undoubtedly was a logistical nightmare. But I think the point is how the adversity translates to the tape.
Okay.
Because they had to rent random gear, because they were using strange tactile samples like snapping harp strings. The resulting music was scrappy. It was unpolished because it physically couldn't be caught.
So the friction is the feature, not a bug.
Exactly. That friction is what made their debut so vibrant. But as they transitioned into their next era, moving from 2011 to 2015, that scrappiness sort of has to evolve.
Because the resources change drastically, right?
Yeah, and the stakes get significantly higher.
Because suddenly they aren't just an indie act anymore, they're a massive commercial property. So let's look at their second album, Ceremonials, which came out in 2011.
A huge pivot for them.
Yeah, the sources note that Florence actively pushed for a massive shift in their sound. She rejected numerous early producer offers because she had this very specific, uncompromising vision. She wanted it darker, and she specifically demanded bigger drum sounds and bigger bass.
And there's a very practical mechanical reason for that demand, too.
Which is?
When you graduate from playing 500-person clubs to playing 20,000-seat arenas, delicate, scrappy acoustic arrangements simply evaporate into the air.
Yeah, they just get lost in the room.
Exactly. If you want to move a stadium, you need low-end frequencies. You need drums and bass that literally vibrate the chest cavities of the people in the back row.
That makes total sense.
Florence understood she needed a sweeping, overwhelming wall of sound to match the scale of the venues she was now expected to conquer.
But the contrast between that massive, confident wall of sound and what was actually happening inside her head is just staggering to me.
The anxiety, you mean?
Yes. Despite this rapid ascent, Florence was suffering from intense, debilitating anxiety. There's this story from right before the 2010 MTV Video Music Awards.
Oh, the VMAs performance.
Yeah. They're about to perform Dog Days Are Over on one of the biggest pop culture stages in the world, and she is terrified. She is losing sleep. She is literally crying backstage.
It's so intense.
And during the rehearsal, they had built this rotating platform for the stage design, and she is struggling just to stand up on the thing.
This is where we see the intense compartmentalization required of a generational performer. Because, think about it, the audience at the VMAs didn't see the terror.
Not at all.
They didn't see the tears or the loss of sleep. They saw a performance that critics and fans universally described as ethereal, joyous, and fiercely confident.
It's wild. She somehow harnessed all of that visceral panic, pushed it through her vocal cords, and just completely leveled the room.
And the data proves it, too. Following that performance, Florence and the Machine became the #1 search term on Google globally.
Wow.
They were generating something like 1,700 tweets a minute, and the album shot to #2 on iTunes. It was the ultimate launchpad moment.
But it really makes me wonder, how long can an artist sustain that, using sheer terror as fuel?
It is a very dangerous tightrope.
Oh, yeah.
But that specific ability facing terrifying high-pressure situations and transmuting them into triumphs is precisely what sets the stage for the summer of 2015.
Okay, let's get into 2015, because this is a legendary piece of music history. They released their third album, How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful, which debuts at #1 in the US, which is a massive milestone on its own.
Yeah.
And then comes Glastonbury. For anyone listening who might not follow the European festival circuit, headlining Glastonbury is arguably the most prestigious slot in live music.
Without a doubt.
The Foo Fighters, literally the biggest rock band in the world, are scheduled to headline. But frontman Dave Grohl falls off a stage in Sweden and fractures his leg.
Which creates an unprecedented logistical and cultural vacuum.
Total chaos.
You have a festival with hundreds of thousands of people expecting a heavy, aggressive Friday night grunge rock set, and suddenly there is no headliner.
Right. So Glastonbury organizers call Florence and the Machine to step in, which, by the way, makes Florence once the very first British female headliner of the 21st century at Glastonbury.
A historic moment.
It is. But I keep thinking about the psychology of that audience. You have a field full of people wearing Foo Fighters t-shirts.
Yeah.
How do you win them over?
Well, she opens the set by doing a cover of the Foo Fighters song, Times Like These, as a tribute to Dave Grohl.
Which is just brilliant.
It is a masterstroke of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
By opening with that tribute, she completely disarms the crowd. She acknowledges the elephant in the room, basically saying, I know I am not who you expected to see, and then invites them to sing along with her.
It's so smart. Is there anything more pressure-inducing than being the literal understudy for the biggest rock band in the world at the biggest festival in the world?
Probably not.
But stepping into a void like that, where the expectations are completely skewed, it forces artists to cement their legacy. They aren't just playing a set anymore. They're basically rescuing a cultural institution.
Exactly. It transforms from a concert into a historical event. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights how adaptable they are, not just live, but in the studio too.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at their collaborations, they completely refuse to stay in their lane.
Yeah, their versatility is arguably their most defining characteristic. They never allowed themselves to be trapped in, like, an indie rock or Baroque pop box.
Well, if you look at the mechanics of Florence's voice, it possesses a massive vibrato and an incredible emotional range. That kind of instrument can anchor almost any genre.
Which explains how they ended up working with EDM giant Calvin Harris. I mean, if you had asked me on paper if her dramatic, romantic vocals would work over a thumping, heavily compressed electronic dance beat, I'd probably be pretty skeptical.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it should work.
Right. But they did a remix of Spectrum, which became their first UK #1 hit, and then they teamed up again for his track Sweet Nothing, which also went straight to #1.
And the reason that works mechanically is that in electronic music, the producer often needs a vocal that can cut through layers of heavy synthetic bass and hi-hats.
That makes sense.
Her voice essentially acts as the ultimate organic synthesizer. It brings humanity to the digital beat. And importantly, this genre bending wasn't just a brief electronic phase either.
Far from it. In 2016, they pivot completely and record a stunning classical cover of Ben E. King's Stand By Me to serve as the main theme for the video game Final Fantasy XV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they even composed original songs for the game's expansive orchestral score. And fast forward to recent years, they're collaborating with pop royalty.
The Taylor Swift tracks.
Right, exactly. In 2024, Florence co-writes and features on the track Florida with Taylor Swift. And then in 2025, they collaborate with The Weeknd on a track called Reflections Laughing.
It just proves how universally respected their sonic architecture really is.
Yeah.
But, this brings us to an incredibly important nuance about the band itself.
What's that?
When we say Florence and the Machine, it is vital for you, the listener, to understand that the machine part of that equation is not a static group of session musicians.
Right, it's not like the Beatles.
Exactly. It is a highly complex, constantly shifting entity.
Yeah, I was looking through the timeline of the band members, and it really is a revolving door. Key architects of their early sound have moved on. Like Christopher Lloyd Hayden, their longtime drummer, departed in 2018. Robert Ackroyd, the guitarist who had been there anchoring the sound since the very beginning in 2007, he left in 2024.
Which is a huge loss.
But the thing that really confuses me in our sources is the situation with Isabella Summers, the original Machine.
Yeah, the Isabel Summers timeline is a perfect case study in how complicated creative partnerships can be.
Because the documentation we have is actually quite contradictory, isn't it?
Highly contradictory. For instance, Summers did not participate in writing, producing, or recording their 2022 album, Dance Fever.
Okay.
Furthermore, she didn't join the band for the massive world tour that supported it.
Right, which in 99% of bands means that person has quit or been fired. You don't just sit out an entire album cycle on a world tour.
You would certainly think so. Yet she publicly stated in late 2022 and early 2023 that she was absolutely still a member of the band.
Wait, really?
Yeah. And to further complicate things, in the official reports surrounding their new 2025 album, she's explicitly listed as a band member.
So how does that even work? Are you in the band or not?
Well, it requires us to sort of rethink what a band is in the modern era.
Okay, I'm listening.
We are so used to the 1970s rock paradigm, right, where 4 people sign a contract in blood and play the exact same instruments for 40 years until they hate each other.
Yeah, the classic behind-the-music trope.
Exactly. But Florence and the Machine operates more like a fluid, creative collective. A foundational member like Isabella can step back for years to pursue scoring films or producing, yet remains so fundamentally tied to the artistic DNA of the project that she is always considered part of the machine, regardless of her presence on a specific tour.
That's actually really beautiful. It's more like an extended family than a corporate entity. You can leave the house, but you never leave the family.
Perfectly said.
But, okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We need to move into this current era, 2025 and 2026, because this is where the story gets intensely dark and profoundly personal.
Yeah, the recent events.
During the Dance Fever tour in 2023, everything just ground to a terrifying halt. Florence Welch suffered a severe near-death medical emergency that required life-saving surgery.
It's the kind of profound physical trauma that fundamentally rewires a person.
It has to, right?
Absolutely. For an artist whose entire methodology is based on channeling her internal emotional state directly into her music, a brush with mortality of that magnitude is going to shatter any remaining creative boundaries.
And the result of that trauma is their sixth studio album, Everybody Scream, which was released on October 31st, 2025.
A Halloween release date is definitely not a coincidence.
No, not at all. This album dives headfirst into witchcraft, folk horror, mysticism, insanity, and death. It's heavily described in the sources as a Baroque orchestral pop record.
And for anyone wondering what Baroque pop actually sounds like in this context, imagine the rhythmic structure of a modern rock song. But instead of electric guitars driving the melody, you have lush, intricate arrangements of classical instruments.
So harps, cellos.
Harps, cellos, brass, and choral sections playing dark, theatrical melodies. It creates a sound that is both ancient and urgent.
Florence herself called it the most personal album she's ever made because it directly confronts that near-death experience. And there is a detail about the recording process that I just find staggering.
About the single?
Yeah. The second single from the album is a track called One of the Greats. Florence originally wrote it just as a long poem. When it came time to record it, she did it in a single take. She literally stood at the microphone and sang it straight from the page.
Think about the mechanics of recording a sweeping vocal performance in a single take in the year 2025.
It's unheard of.
We live in an era where vocals are endlessly comped, meaning producers will slice together 50 different takes to create one mathematically perfect, pitch-corrected vocal line.
Right.
By choosing a single continuous take, she is actively choosing to preserve the micro-imperfections.
Unlike the breathing and stuff.
Exactly. The sharp intakes of breath, the slight vocal phrase, she's capturing the literal sound of survival.
It makes me wonder if a brush with mortality completely strips away the commercial filter. Like when you look death in the face, you probably stop caring about writing a safe, radio-friendly pop hook. You just have to purge the experience.
The catharsis.
Yeah, it feels like Everybody Scream isn't just a record. It operates almost like a musical exorcism. And the momentum they have right now is undeniable.
It's been massively successful.
With singles like Sympathy Magic and Buckle, the album debuted at #1 on 6 different charts, and they are in the midst of a massive 2026 tour, headlining venues like Madison Square Garden and returning to completely dominate Reading and Leeds.
It really brings our deep dive full circle.
It does.
We started by looking at a teenager who was so terrified of her first gig, she almost gave her band a joke name as a defense mechanism. And we've watched her evolve into a generational voice, someone capable of absorbing everything from a burning trailer and festival panic to profound physical trauma and translating all of it into sweeping cinematic art that resonates globally.
It really is a masterclass in survival as an art form. And as we wrap up today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought to chew on. We just discussed how Florence Welch's rawest, most impactful work, from the scrappy bathroom recording of Dog Days to the one-take, unedited vocal of one of the greats, was born out of chaos, limitation, and preserving human imperfection.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the broader landscape of the music industry today. We are living in an era obsessed with AI-generated perfection, auto-tuned vocals, and algorithmically engineered hit songs. If we continue to smooth out all the rough edges and sanitize the recording process, are we accidentally sterilizing music?
It's a scary thought.
Are we robbing ourselves of the ability to capture the very messy, terrifying, and beautiful sound of human survival that makes an artist like Florence Welch so necessary?
It is a vital question. If you engineer out the chaos, you might just engineer out the soul.
Definitely something to think about the next time you hear a perfectly polished song on the radio. Thanks for listening to Peep L Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.